So it's really exciting to be here and have this opportunity. The session has come about off the back of the excitement and the positive response we've had from the white paper that Inma Martinez wrote, Rising Above the Noise, which is really starting to look at what does AI and fast-moving technology mean for us in the FM industry. And it's a really exciting topic area, and one of the reasons I joined this industry last year. The FM industry has been the custodian of our physical spaces that most of the society engages with at some point in their life for decades. And as a result, that gives us an insight into the way that people engage with those physical spaces. It gives us insight into what they expect from them, the purpose of them, and also the experiences they expect them to deliver. And it could be argued that it then gives our industry a unique perspective into what is the right technology to help us inform those spaces, create those experiences, and deliver what the users, you and I, we all work in offices, hospitals, schools, what is it that we expect when we go in? So we really are an opportunity to shape this. And shaping that won't just affect those physical spaces that we look after, but it will start to have that impact and understand how that technology will work with us as individuals, as the wider society. So the white paper starts to take a look at, well, where should we focus? It's a huge landscape, right? Technology is changing so quickly. It's almost like every time you open the news, there's something new, there's something different to consider. So the purpose of this white paper was to really take a look at 5 areas that we should consider when we think about physical space and the way that we humans interact with it. And Inma, if anyone that knows her will have seen, is a huge tech pioneer and a leading expert in AI. In fact, has been developing, I found out in our conversation earlier, was developing AI before the term AI even existed. So the word that we're so familiar with now, when it was first being developed, it didn't have a name. But that experience has meant that as AI starts to hit major industries, so they phone. And as a result, is at the forefront of the decisions that industries need to make. And those industries include pharmaceuticals and medical, the European Space Agency, the European Space Agency, automotive. So every aspect every industry is looking to understand how do you engage this technology and how do you take it forward. And it is a huge pleasure to have the opportunity to hear how we in facilities management can also take advantage. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'm really delighted to have been part of this endeavor. And let me start by thanking Leanne for encouraging and mentoring this white paper from the perspective that it had to incentivize the changing attitudes towards understanding facilities management as to something that has to do with how we make people more creative, how do we put them in the relevant places, how offices become the places where people find their purpose and their value, and also how we create optimize operational efficiency. So it's 2 big tasks where AI can really play a role. I also want to say a big thank you to Dominic Duffy. Where are you? Thank you so much. Dominic is Director of Marketing and Brand Strategy, Proposition Strategy. And Dom and I worked throughout the whole summer last year ensuring that these 5 areas really showed not just insights, but that they show practicalities. We wanted to show you real examples, complete demystifying of what AI is supposed to be versus what it really is. And I'm really indebted for his support and how he encouraged me to go into higher stakes and really deliver what we all wanted. Because this white paper is not about AI, it's about what we can do with AI, which is very, very different. I'm flabbergasted when sometimes I'm being asked, questions about AI as if AI was an entity. And because I have built it, I know that it's simply a system behind many things: mobile phones, telecommunications, MRI machines. It's always behind, ensuring that whatever the task is performed with perfection, zero errors, that it can do things that we cannot do. And that's why AI has that utilitarian essence, and is not a super thinking brain that will one day take over the world. I'm so tired of what the media sells, and perfectly intelligent people think that there is such AI hidden somewhere out there, when it's just what we make it. AI is trained by people like me, and that's why sometimes it's biased and it's full of aberrations, because it's trained by humans. So there is something I want to establish so that you understand why AI now is the talk of everyone. There is an AI that is as old as 70 years, and it goes in parallel to the birth of computing. And it goes all the way back to Turing and the machine at Bletchley. Yeah, it's very old. It's about a system of intelligence that resolves tasks that are almost impossible for us to do in our biological brain. And that AI has done amazing things and allowed companies to create predictive scenarios like Shell and the scenario planning that now all oil companies use, and personalization of e-commerce websites. People who bought that book also bought that book. There you go. That's an algorithm called collaborative filtering. And we moved on and on and on to make it smarter and smarter until we were not using math, which is the safe space of AI, but we started to use neural networks, teaching the system to think like a human. And 2016 is the year that everything changes, when a small startup, DeepMind, up in King's Cross, teaches that neural machine to beat the super champion of Go. And then between 2016 and 2018, you have the perfect storm. Many more things happen in AI, not just alpha and AlphaFold, predicting the structure of proteins in time record. You know, the human body has 20,000 protein structures, and that little brain within 3 weeks and a half predicted 15,000, something that the biologists didn't think that it would be possible. But thanks to that, we were able to develop the RNA vaccines, because it's based on RNA proteins. So 2018 was the moment in which vehicular automation, cars driven by themselves, machines being trained by Siemens and Fujifilm to predict the evolution of tumors in cancer markers and make the radiology world like a new phenomenon. And that was when governments hit the brakes and said, we need to look into AI. 2018, because of the explosion. And of course, last year, I remember precisely 22nd of September 2022 is when ChatGPT 2.5 was given to some of us to play with. And in the middle of October, everyone got to play with it, to the shock and horror of people in government, especially. And that's why last year was such a roller coaster, because we saw a type of AI that could speak like us, write like us, create images and visions and in seconds. And even though it was poorly trained, and this is something that Google raised their hands and said, this is an aberration. They were pushed to actually come to market with this, is out there. And because it's out there, we are now living with wonderful AIs that are safe and that work and that are fantastic. And then this new AI, the advanced AI, that is showing us that we need to take the reins and we need to start challenging some of its potential outcomes. And this is why this year is really important, because we will see that everything slows down and every new advance in this type of AI is challenged. Is that safe? Is that going to put people out of work? Like, the technology companies have a very hard year to demonstrate that they come in peace, that this is good for us, because never before they've been challenged, ever. I am an internet entrepreneur and a mobile internet entrepreneur, and I remember the internet was unregulated for 20 years. Everybody was out to lunch at Westminster and Brussels. And I remember going there to provide testimonies like, you have to look at people's data. And nobody could comprehend until Cambridge Analytica. So because they learned the hard lessons then, now they are so eager to really make it safe and trustworthy. And this year is interesting because we have already seen events that prove that nobody is asleep at the wheel. So last year, all governments thought, oh no, 2024, 2/3 of the world go on general elections, social media is going to be full of deep fakes and deep videos, and this will be a horror. And in just 2 months of 2024, doctored images of Her Royal Highness are detected not by a group of people on Twitter, but by the official media. This is very good news. Like, nobody is asleep. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, Getty Images, AP and Reuters. And I always said last year, people will wake up and put a stop to the aberrations. It has always happened. Genome scientific endeavors. And then we realize, oh no, we shouldn't clone humans. And then we all agree that we will not clone humans, etc., etc. Many scientific endeavors have been halted when they became our auto-destruction. And this is the year that AI is being put through that mill. So we need to learn what it is, what it is not, and what it shouldn't be, and start demanding that it has a real purpose, that it has a real functionality, that yes, it comes to solve this issue. And then, yeah, it's lovely that it can paint like, you know, the Impressionists in France, but we also have humans that paint amazingly, so we don't need this, like, to start calibrating. So I want to mention just very quickly the 5 areas where you will see AI this year coming into relevance. So, of course, sustainability and energy management. The UN 17 principles have put that into everyone's agenda in all sectors, and AI definitely is becoming the tool of choice. Human equity towards human centricity. Never in the 20th century a company building products and services built that kind of ergonomy. Companies wanted to sell us things, and sometimes it was dangerous and detrimental to us, and other times, luckily for us, we survived the products, right? Not anymore. Everyone building a spoon or a mobile phone is using ergonomy to ensure that it's fit for a human to use, and AI is now being put through that challenge. And equity is because it's not about democratizing, it's about giving the most vulnerable whatever they need the most. So it's about being impartial, but ensuring that everyone is looked after. AI will optimize absolutely everything. It's already doing it, but we will see it more. That's the superpower. And thanks to AI, and the more we digitize areas of business, the more certain things will be revealed. The unknown unknowns, you know, things that are happening and we have absolutely no clue, like when in the pandemic, when we all bought absolutely everything online, all of a sudden, the logistics industry realized that, oh no, the freight ports are not digital. People have whiteboards here and nobody knows who's coming or working tomorrow. Yeah, that was it. Thank you very much. You know, the ports were totally analog. So these will be revealing many things that we need to fix. And then my favorite one, realizing that the type of society and the type of businesses that we need to build are resilient businesses, resilient society. We know that there are challenges out there that will happen. We will have to deal with them. So the question will be how best to do that. How do we prepare our people? How do we plan? Because it's about resilience. And we have seen this not just in government strategies. For example, Japan. Japan knows that from now until 7 years, they have a massive earthquake that is coming. They will not be able to stop it. So the question is, let's build a society that is resilient. And in every aspect of business I see now, everybody talks about, let's just learn how to survive it, react, learn from it. So resiliency is a major asset. So I'm going to now move over to Leanne. And we're going to be dissecting many interesting things, and I look forward to your questions. Please be candid, ask everything and anything that you ever wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you. And we did have a great time just before we joined, and luckily managed to rein it in and not make everything late. But I think you've touched on a couple of really interesting areas in there, and resilience is a big one. And I think you're right. We've got to a point that we need to take a breath. And do you think there are particular triggers? I mean, it's not just us as individuals to understand how to shape it, how to make it work for us at home, at work, but the role of regulators and governments and how they're catching up. Because you said last year it was like, oh, it's all going to be mad on social media. But where do you think that's going, and what is really triggering them to really start to respond?
So last year, all regulators were so ready to come out with some kind of regulation because they saw the shock and horror. But very soon, around April, May, and I'm speaking from the G7 perspective, which is where I am, they realize that regulation, if it comes to market too soon and poorly advised and poorly defined, it ends up being like a cog in the wheel. So then in May, everyone kind of agreed in the G7 and the G20, right, let's just establish at least some parameters and shared values of where we want AI to be really good for us and useful, and what kind of principles could be adopted that we all agree that they are necessary as measures. So very far removed from regulation. So I started working on that. I had no summer. And then the British government offered to convene, the most powerful nations in the world developing AI to Bletchley Park. It was really amazing to be there in the discussions because really AI now is the business of everyone, and we all need to make sure is for progress and for societal welfare. And then the EU Act, the third version, came to Brussels, and everybody wanted to sign it up before Christmas. Yeah. And I remember 12th of December, we were still arguing, and it almost didn't get signed because the EU is a place where legal and lawyers have found a way to kind of fix the problems with regulation, lots of regulation. It's typical of the European Commission. But then, because of AI, it's something that still is in definition. If you asked me 5 years ago what AI was, it's not the definition I will give you now. Yeah? Then how can you then create a regulation that is going to set in stone and then make everyone adapt to it? So it almost didn't get signed because it was very restrictive to certain aspects of innovation in AI that certain member countries wanted to see. The UK and the US have a total vertical approach based on principles and values and less regulation, because these two nations are used to building industries and things and allowing for entrepreneurialism. And then this is how we do things, right? And that's why now everyone is looking at the UK and the US as kind of like the parameters, yeah? Because regulation is something is felt as too restrictive. And it's true, but it's because AI is still in development. It hasn't shown us what it can really do with precision. Therefore, we cannot create a super regulation on top. And this year, because everybody is in general elections mode, nobody's creating any regulation. This is my own prediction. I'm right so far. You know, like I could bet on myself.
Have you got a little AI that helps you with that
betting
process?
No, I'm just like my own common sense. Is because we need to see this year through as to how we survive the elections not being tampered with because of generative AI, and then learn a little bit more as to how these Gen AIs are being fine-tuned. Everybody's very quickly now to put products in the market, and then disaster happens. You know, Google launched Gemini, the new DALL-E, and then bam, African-American Vikings. Ooh, who has been training this AI model? Yeah. So again, backpedal.
But they've obviously been corrected, because now Apple are talking to them to kind of put it into their devices as well. So, but the speed in which it's changing.
Yeah.
I mean, can we afford for governments and regulators to have a year just focusing on elections? I mean, the products are coming out, and we will, as individuals and businesses,
That's
start to
why
use them.
the principles and the values are the way we are going to agree amongst ourselves. And I do believe in principles and values, because the first thing that principles and values show you is that each country have their own. So for example, AI safety. It sounded like a super idea in September when the British Prime Minister announced it when he went to Washington and met with the US President. And then we had it, and as soon as January, I'm getting phone calls from big organizations that work on standards and industry stuff. And they're telling us, the definitions no longer work. What is safety in the UK? It might not be safety in Italy or in South Korea. And it's true.
Yeah.
Because of cultural, historical values. So you cannot create regulation on abstractions.
It's hard enough just creating a safety rule for physical safety, the way that we do safety in the UK, and then you travel abroad, you realise that we are very protective of individuals and their working
Yeah,
for
but
us.
this is like, I do a lot of exploring, and I love going to Alaska and these crazy places. And is it safe to go in the woods in Alaska? Well, you better know how to handle bears, yeah? Exactly. What is the meaning of safety?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I guess with AI, there are no borders. So that you haven't even got that physical, moving from one area to another. It's out there, and it doesn't care where it's sitting.
It depends on where it is and what it's doing. So I'll give you an example. Data extraction in the US from consumer sites is a lot more invasive than the ones that we allow here. Because here the European mindset is we need to look after our people. We have that approach of governments look after people. Whereas in the US, that is not that defined like that. Mm. It's all about, let's give people wonderful things. Yeah, but it's not, it's... So you go to the US and you start using your European credit card, and all of a sudden you start getting emails from God knows what companies, and you're like, what happened here? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's hard because we've got to navigate it all ourselves. But we are, as individuals and again as businesses, the way that we adopt those products and use them will start to maybe drive governments around some of those regulatory grey areas?
Yes, I love that question.
Because, well, you've seen it across history, yeah? So, we were talking earlier when pharmacies started to innovate the way that they could develop drugs, laws came out quickly to protect people from the speed in which that innovation could be introduced. When we developed the ability to fly, pretty quickly we had rules around aviation and how to track planes and all of that. So our adoption and the way that industries adopt the products should start to drive and influence the way regulators create that framework.
Yes, and this is the little campaign I have with myself and with clients in industry that I work with, not just governments. Governments know how to build laws. Fantastic, that's it, that's what they know. But we, the business people, know how to create products, how to put them in the hands of people, how to create a market where there was nothing. We are there. And when governments talk about building AI templates and sandboxes, they have no idea how that's done. And this is the year in which some of us, in certain key sectors, will say, look, our company decided we're going to use AI for this and that, and look at this wonderful case study. This could really be an example for everyone, and bingo, there you go. And it has always happened in every sector. It's driven by the people in that sector themselves. They are the ones that know.
Yeah.
The business cases cannot come from government. Government is nothing about business. It's about law and regulation. And, it's a different skill.
Yeah, we could do probably a whole fireside
There
chat
you
on
go.
business and government, particularly this year. But so, when we take a look, say, at our industry at facilities management, I mean, there are key things that we really don't want to get caught behind the regulations coming out, because it will not only help us manage our physical spaces better, provide individuals with a better experience, but it can have a real positive impact when we start to look at engaging these technologies for efficiency, for sustainability, and it not only helps us make sure we go into a room that isn't too hot, too cold, but it drives a longer term benefit to us as a society where we're consuming less energy, putting less pressure on the environment. So how do you think that's going to play out in those areas, and also making sure that it doesn't get caught behind regulatory frameworks, parliamentary elections, and how can we influence that as an industry?
There's always, so you have visionary companies that saw where it was going, led the way, bam, yeah? And then you have companies that are a bit more, okay, let me see where this whole thing is going, and then I'm going to come in and perfect it, yeah? And that is a really good position to be in. So I always believe in perfecting any initiative. We have seen now very specific cases where AI can really help with very specific things. So now the question is, yeah, let's do that our way in this or that part of our business, because the nature of stakeholders is always, let's not rush ourselves, but also be quick to learn and not, miss boats. Yeah. It's a fine place to be. I've been a CEO many times. I sit in many boards, and you want to give steps forward on solid ground. And there are very specific areas that I guess we highlighted in the white paper where definitely people should go now, just to test, just to see what it needs fine-tuning. Not every organization is like another one. And then start testing, because as usual in tech is, the nature of the marketplace is that of competition.
Yeah.
This is not about any other trigger. It's about creating assets that are attributes to compete better than everyone else. And our mission as stakeholders is to find opportunities where we can test things, that we learn what works for us, what doesn't work for us, and then if it really does work, boom, go. Because everybody else will come after that. So I remember in the entrepreneurial world, it was like first to market. It was like, yeah, well, I'd rather be number 2 because the first to market will make lots of mistakes. And then we would learn from that, and then we'll make it better. Yeah. But I think that's why we wanted to show examples in the white paper that were already happening. That this is not in a lab in some university college, but that these are realistic things. Because now it will be the prime time to start moving in.
Yeah.
Mobile phones was that. I remember in 1999 being given handsets that could connect to the internet and bumping into lampposts because I was just not used to walking and looking at screens. And then in 2 years, everything exploded. 2 years, yeah.
And I think we're at a point where it will either, like you said, we'll hold our breath and we'll slow it all down, or we will suddenly wake up tomorrow and things will have changed. And when we start to look at sort of, some of the key success factors, data's going to play a huge part in this. And not just data that we own individually as organisations, but the data of our wider ecosystem to really move that dial. And I think, I don't know, in the, all the things that in my role often you get, we need new shiny toys, we need new technology, this will solve everything. But it always comes back to, have I got the data and the information that will then really bring that capability to life and make sure that it's delivering its value. In the key things that we talked about in the white paper, is there one area where you, above all of them, where you think data is, and getting that data accuracy and all of that information is really going to help progress that learn fast, move on, keep testing and trialing it?
I mean, all of them are based on data being very useful, but my personal favorite is when we design buildings for people to work in, and we want to see how they utilize them. Because people are biological beings that have their own routines, and they like to sit in the same place in the cafeteria, and but then they do different things, and we want to learn. Our business is about people, right? And data that helps us design better workspaces where people are not just comfortable and happy and in a good mood, but find the joy and purpose. That is a super goal.
Yeah.
When I was designing handsets, my design team hated me because I always say, yeah, this is great, but we can do, let's move it up there. I want a feature that they feel that when they're using this phone, they are part of the future. People in Finland at Nokia used to look at me like, who is this woman? Yeah, so can we use data that helps us make the interiors and the way people exchange views with each other and bump into each other, like we increase the level of creativity, of enjoyment, of feeling great about being there? That would be the ultimate for me. If you were to tell me from these 5 things you said, which one would you like to work on? That's the one.
And it does. I mean, you talked about phones, but we've come so used to our phones. I don't think there's many people that can put their hand up and say if they left their house without their phone, they would have a comfortable day. And anyone that does, I'd love to meet, because it is something, I've tried everything to kind of reduce it. But a lot of it is about getting that right information at the right time for me to navigate my environment and make it much more enjoyable. And so it is. And by understanding that about me, you'll get something in return. So maybe I will pay more attention to the lights in the building, or if I order food or anything and I'm no longer going to have the meeting, cancel the food. And to then start to naturally play my part in just improving that whole experience, as well as staying focused on things like sustainability and waste management.
Yeah, and data is so influenced by cultural values. In agriculture, which is a sector that I've worked a lot, I learned, and this is hilarious, that when it's 10 degrees above the normal summer heat in Germany, everybody wants to buy watermelons. When I learned that, I was like, what? I said, in England, we all go to the pub. This is what you do. You drink more beer. But there you go, watermelons it is. And all supermarkets order extra. But then let's imagine that it's not 10 degrees, but only 5. Then you don't have the same reaction in the people, yeah? So therefore you have order extra, and then the supermarkets open the door of the vans and they don't want to buy everything, and it's like shenanigans, yeah, in the food industry. But isn't that funny? And data, when you start getting data and the data shows you funny things, this is a gold mine. Anomalies are the jewels of when you're going to extract information that is really worth it.
Yeah.
And that's why all data is good. You just have to find and pick and choose the combinations and the meanings, and then something opens in front of you that is so worth exploring.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, when you talk about it like that, everyone gets really excited because everyone wants to find that anomaly that is the game changer, that does make you differentiator in your industry or your market. But with that does come a relationship with the people who are providing that data, and making sure that when we provide that data, it's safe, it's secure. And of course, the paper touches on security, not just building security, because the more technical we make the buildings, then the easier the buildings are to hack. But then the more data we collect about individuals in the building, the more we have a sense of responsibility to protect that.
Yeah.
So this really ties into, and I know this is an area that you've been working in, and we almost lost the day on it, cyber.
Yeah.
And what is the impact within cyber? Because the line between physical and digital, or the clicks and the bricks, as I've often referred to it, is blurred, because you can damage the physical through the digital. And I mean, that must be growing at pace in that area.
Top leading companies in cyber, they acknowledge that more than 50% of the breakthroughs are because of human error. So they always advise clients that, yes, there are specific cybersecurity solutions like zero trust platforms and all that, that you should really use. But then fundamentally train your people to be street smart. Because the ransomware individuals and the phishing attacks are because somebody clicked in the wrong place.
And that risk becomes higher and higher the more we are on our phone. We were talking earlier. Now, I've worked in technology all my career, and I've had some roles in cyber, and I spend a lot of my time going, and again, it's not about the technical side, it's about that human awareness. Don't click this. But all it takes is for me to be on a Teams call with my video off, not in this job, previous roles, in a Teams call with my video off, half listening and then multitasking and seeing something on my phone and just clicking. And it's just a moment of tiredness. It is, and the way, the sophistication around it as well, that, people looking and feeling like someone that it's...
Well, let me tell you about 2 recent super events in cybersecurity. 3 German generals on a WebEx call. One of them is connecting from a Singapore hotel, and he uses the Wi-Fi in the hotel, not the encryption. So Russian hackers were just like were on WebEx trying to extract, bam, they come across the conference call, and they record it, and then they play it on Russian national TV to prove that the West is trying to destroy Mother Russia. But can you imagine the shenanigans in Germany like 4 weeks ago? And all because this person didn't use the encryption and connected with the Wi-Fi in the hotel.
And do you know what? And that, it is a slight stretch. I'm sure there's and apologies if there is people in the room that have those sort of conferences. But when we're even defining the working spaces in offices, we had this where you create the Teams rooms. And when you create your Teams rooms or these full interactive rooms, it's normally on a Wi-Fi network. And we had created, in a previous role, this beautiful room. It was gorgeous, but it was quite near the end of the building. And then the cyber team who came along, my CISOs came along, and they said, no, we're shutting the room down. Because one of them was able to go outside and with not very much sophistication could hack into the conference call that was going on in the building. And we're already talking 20, 30 meters.
Yeah.
And so when we look at all of this exciting technology that connects us better, so we have to consider that negative path. How can it be used, not against us, I guess, or put us at a disadvantage? And it's a big conversation.
There's always going to be someone that finds a little gap, and then in cybersec they say it's about resiliency. We're going to bring them down, then they will regroup, they're back on again, we have to go and bring them down, but this time we're faster at bringing them down and learning, and it's faster and it's faster. So I always say that fundamentally there's a lot of goodness in the world. We are all on the same page. We all want the best for all of us. And there's like a handful of people that gives us headaches. But if we cooperate and create alliances, we will bring them down faster. That's our mission. Fundamentally, people are good and everybody wants the best.
Yeah.
It's just that some people make it really hard.
Yeah. And, you know, that resilience, how big a part did that play? I mean, we had a great conversation about the Resilient Society and what you've been involved in Japan. I guess as you're looking at rolling out, you know, a smart city and a resilient city, how do you build all of those elements in to get a product that is safe, secure, delivers experience, and can adapt as quickly as we are fickle?
Simple things. I worked in a project in London about why high streets are important.
Okay.
And finally,
shopping. Sorry, that was it. Literally the only word.
Someone realized that yes, we can all create this super urban metropolis, but if you don't create a sense of locality and of neighborhood, and put cafes and little shops, and people come out of their houses and they just go there on Saturday morning, you will never create a sense of community, because people would live in isolation. Yeah, which is what happens in major cities in America, where you shop at the mall and there's no high street, because the concept is European. So the conclusion was, oh boy, we have to build more high streets, because if one day we need people to have empathy and help each other, because we have a crisis, those social connections will not exist amongst individuals. And thank God for that, because look at the pandemic, when everybody was clapping on the balconies and helping the neighbor, and thank God. And it's those tiny details that sometimes the solution is something very simple and non-technological.
Yeah.
Which is why resiliency is a strategy in which every level of the company, not just the tech or the CIO or the CISO, the human resources, human capital management, they have to come into play, because anyone can ask. The best thing is when someone asks a question and it's the question, and you're like, thank God this person came to the meeting. Yeah. So multi-skill thinking is super important to really find the solutions. Technology is so now the useful tool that what we are missing is EQ, not IQ quantum.
Yeah.
Is common sense, empathy, being able to operate in teams, having optimism and positive reactions and personalities. That's the people we want.
Yeah, and we haven't touched on this question in our lead up, but you touched on something there, and it's something I've come across a few times, that one of the biggest areas in all our organisation that's going to be a real game changer of this is our HR. It is our people department. Not only from that asking those questions, but as we bring some of the more advanced products in, they become part of our workforce, and suddenly we've got to engage with them in the same way we'd say bring in a really intelligent new joiner, and then how do we exit them when they have all of this data about us? Is that something you've been covering off quite a bit as well as you've been going through this with the government?
Well, I have worked on how do we get tacit knowledge to be shared across the organization when it's very valuable. For example, in any roles, people that work in a specific role for over 20 years or more, they develop that intuitive know-how that is impossible to put into words because it's intuitive. It's like an athlete. How does Simone Biles jump around and does 3 super turns in the sky? And like, what is that? Because she's trained her entire life. So trying to extract tacit knowledge from valuable individuals in many positions so that they become part of our common knowledge is what really creates innovation in companies and a new culture. Yeah. Because when those individuals retire and they leave, oh my God, you lose so much.
Yeah, and you know, and then we have to, I guess, take a very similar approach when it comes to some of those technologies, which will build that knowledge about us and the way we operate. And if a new product comes out, then we've got to think of a new way of engaging and transferring. I mean, the whole sort of migration of information from product to product becomes a lot more complex because you're dealing with a creation that is very close to the way we think, we operate. And so we've got to get that structure in place.
And building open-ended products. I always put products in the hands of people and let's see what they do.
Yeah.
And many times they started using them for other unrelated things that they found that this thing was useful, which we never thought in the lab. They were like, oh. And in tech, it happens all the time because certain teams create very specific solutions for very specific things, but then their minds don't travel across absolutely every circumstance of life. And then someone at this end takes that and starts using it for something else, which is great.
So will we start to see more in businesses, industries, not, you know, we've touched on it, technology is always the easy bit. It's understanding how people can engage with it. But will we start to see more of a growth of talent that can map together technology to give that end-to-end story? I mean, we always, in any products, you hear about the user journey, the user experience, but it's normally very unique to one bit of a product.
So in human centricity, we build products based on the Maslow pyramid of needs, which is a psychological analysis like, what is it that people, what do you need to keep people sane and happy, yeah? So the pyramid of needs is the basic level is food, shelter from cold and the weather and yeah, like basic physical needs. And then you move to feeling protected, and it comes from others, your family unit, then the love that you get from other people, and then you start moving towards an area of your place within a group that is not your family, and your social integration, your ability to make friends and interact with others and be part of something. And eventually, everything goes back to the self. Who am I? What is my purpose on this earth? What am I good at? Why am I so special and so different from everybody else? Like my self-content, like I am happy in my skin. So everything goes back to a top. And when I have built products, and especially technological products, to fulfill that, but with the tech, it's exactly that. Eventually, inside the product, there has to be a selfish use of something. I use this because it makes me happy. Yes, everybody has a mobile, but I have my personal apps that I love, that I know what they do for me, and I love my life. Yeah, that kind of feeling.
And I think, you know, in the white paper, you really did a great summary of this. It's great having all this technology, but if we can't understand what technology is going to give me that me moment when I engage with the building, and I'm going to be a different me when I go to the office to when I go to the hospital or when I go to parents' evening. So the way I engage with those physical spaces will change that value moment as well.
Yeah.
And so we have to really start to focus on the individuals, but collectively, I guess, to map together the right technology to keep delivering the experiences in our physical places.
Absolutely. There is a collective, and then there is individually, why am I happy here? Yeah. Why I love my desk, why I love the cafeteria, why I love coming here every day. Like there's something for me. There's got to be something for me. Like that, this is my, and these and these and these. And also because people are used to so much sophistication. I mean, look around your kitchen. There is not an ugly can opener. Have you noticed?
No,
Everything is beautiful these days. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that you're looking at me. Thank you.
No. Because for the last 20 years, ergonomics in product design has been the competitive attribute.
Yes.
When I remember being a child, and my mother had ugly can openers. What is that? And now OXO came and showed us the way, right? Well, exactly like that in tech. So if I'm designing buildings and I want the buildings to create all of those brain connections and feelings, I have to remember it has to create feelings for the collective, feelings for the small group, and then eventually, individually, each person has to find that little joy. And I build my own little model, and one of them was a secret joy. And my team was like, what is secret joy? I was like, well, in the UK, we love crisps. But if you buy crisps and you open a pack, your whole family comes round. So you have to open them very silently in the kitchen. And when you manage to do it and nobody has shown up, you're like, yes, this is for me. I want that feeling in that feature of the phone. Yeah, so me. And then another one, and you can apply it to buildings. And another one is whatever humans use, if it's tech, in their head, they know that it's futuristic. I'm using tech. It's got to be futuristic, kind of like the Jetsons, yeah? And therefore, it has to have some sophistication that really proves to them that that building has that, and my friend's building over there, they don't. Like, oh my God, I'm part of the future. That feeling of I am living the future is super strong in human beings. When you buy a car and you see it in one of those super new cars, tell me you don't feel it.
Yeah.
Exactly. The car industry are geniuses at that. I have worked for Audi, and we know what happens when someone sits and the door goes, not bang, goes whoosh, and it compresses. It's on purpose.
But you've also worked for Formula One.
Yeah.
And so I picked up some great, so one of our offices is on the same land as the Mercedes test drive afterwards, or if you're asking the questions, we can tell you which day to go to see.
Tuesday. You want to see Lewis testing? Lewis. Tuesday.
Go around on a Tuesday.
He does test himself and George.
Yeah. So Tuesday, Weybridge.
Tuesday, Weybridge.
Have your meetings
be on the fields around the track, which are open.
But it is. But, we touched on as well, that's a great industry to look to in terms of understanding fast-moving products, being able to take something new, test it, trial it, correct it, and turn that around in days and weeks. And I guess we need to start thinking more like that to really make sure that we don't make heavy long-term investments in a fast-moving product that could be out of date before we've even landed it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's good to take small steps, test, okay, it's working. Okay, another one. Like, this is how really you are efficient in innovation.
Yeah, and not easy though, because, again, some of the changes that we need to make in order to, get that capability into the buildings, it can take construction, it can take big investment, it can take changing the approach of a whole ecosystem, not just one part of the company, which can then bring some complexity into another area that often gets given a task at the end of a process, which is the way we procure and we contract for those products. That's going to significantly change, and we're going to have to think about the way we deal with that.
There's a formula to that. If you're solving a pain, make the investment, because as soon as people start using it, they're like, oh my God, thank God for somebody thought of this, because it's very specific. There is an issue there, and therefore that people will welcome it. The NHS Trust in Manchester, that has 4 hospitals under their guard, 2 years ago decided to go totally digital, and gave all the doctors and consultants and senior nurses tablets, no paper. Can you imagine the horror? And in 9 months, everybody loved it because they also like, oh yeah, now the notes are shared. And of course, this makes so much more sense. Great. Yeah, exactly. That's what we knew. Then finesses and things you would like to test, small things. And then you see them evolving.
Yeah. It has been a brilliant experience, Inma. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it as well.
I really enjoyed it. And thank you all for the questions. And I think if I was to say there is a couple of takeaways for me, AI will develop based on how you and I, as individuals and as organisations, shape it.
Yeah.
And so we need to start to work together and understand how do we shape it to fit the individual requirements of the buildings and the culture of that building, and then meet the individual requirements of the people in it. And it's a big challenge, but I do stand by what I said. I think the industry that we're in gives us a unique insight to start to shape that and deliver some great value. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure there's probably more questions and you might get caught on the way out. But it's been brilliant talking to you and have really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. Thank you. Thank you.